Welcome to the Power of Transformation with Dr. BEGO, where faith meets declaration and purpose ignites breakthrough. Each episode empowers you to speak life, renew your mind, and walk boldly in who God says you are. Your transformation starts now. Good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Power of Transformation. I am Dr. BEGO, and for today, we're going to be centering our time together in this declaration. I declare, according to James 1:17, greatness and prosperity. Before we get started, a couple of things I would like for you to do. Make sure you follow me on all social media platforms at Dr. BEGO Transform. Go to my website, drbegotransform.com, and pick up the latest edition of my book, The 8 Declarations to Speak Over Your Life. Are you ready to begin? Let's start. This particular declaration of greatness and prosperity is grounded in James 1:17. It helps us recognize that God is the source of every good thing that happens in our life. It helps us embrace Him deeply and more rooted. Because up until now, we have been reshaping the mindset. We have been practicing daily declarations, and we have grounded our faith in stewardship. So today, I want us to move just a bit deeper. I want us to remove the pressure by restoring peace that is anchored in knowing this one specific truth, that God is the source of every good thing. Let's ground this time together in James 1:17. It reminds us that every good and perfect gift comes from God. That means your opportunities, your strength, your wealth, your wisdom, every provision that you have in this life is because God has been faithful in your life. And what does it mean for God to be faithful? It means that God does not change. That God is the same yesterday, God is the same today, and God is the same forevermore. That means we must recognize that God is the source of our life. And when we recognize that God is the source of our life, fear, depression, and worry, and anxiety, and even comparison lose their power. The question I have for you is that if you were to do a self-reflection, to do an internal analysis of your life, who have you been treating as your source? Where has your strength come from? Where has your perspective been shaped? How have you grounded your thoughts in wisdom? Because when you identify the source, then you will also be able to understand its significance. Has your income been your source? Has your effort alone been your source? Or have you centered your life in a God who says, I will supply your every need? Let's take a moment to redefine greatness and prosperity. And I want us to redefine it God's way, because greatness is purpose-driven obedience. That means it is not based upon ego. It is not measured by what you have accumulated for yourself. Greatness is about being obedient to the one who is your source. It's about impact. How you begin to engage, influence, and impact the world that is around you. It is about becoming who God has designed for you to be and how you live your life well. So greatness is what? It is purpose-driven, life-driven obedience to your source. The prosperity is different. Because prosperity is not just about money. Prosperity is about wholeness. It is about your peace of mind. It is about your stability in your home. It is about clarity in your decisions. It's about the provisions that you need. It is about your capacity to even be a blessing to other people. So, biblical prosperity includes a host of things in addition to finances. Biblical prosperity is grounded in your spiritual health. It is grounded in your emotional stability. Biblical prosperity shows up in how you financially steward the resources the people have entrusted to you. It is about your relational peace, how you get along well in your family and in your relationships with other people. It is about living a purposeful life. And all of this is shaped by our culture. It is shaped about the influences that we have in our life. And so it is important for us to recognize those defining moments and even those defining people. Who has your ear? Who do you listen to? Who do you watch to help shape your view of prosperity? Because if you view prosperity only from a financial gain, then you miss out emotionally and spiritually and psychologically. And so prosperity has to be more than the money that you accumulate. It has to be greater than your financial position. It has to be grounded in a scripture that helps you recognize and understand that prosperity deals with how you live. Each and every day, moment by moment, how do you live a life that is not only a blessing to you, but also a blessing to other people? This is why this declaration matters. Because James 1:17 does something powerful. What it does is it recenters your faith. So instead of saying, I did it on my own, what you say is, God gave this to me. Instead of saying things like, I'm afraid of losing, you say, God is consistent. Instead of saying things like, I don't deserve this, you say, God is generous. So you begin to recenter your faith in order to live in the greatness and the prosperity that God has promised you. So what does this declaration actually do? This declaration about living in greatness and prosperity, it breaks pride and ego. You come to the place of recognizing that it's not about you. This declaration breaks fear, that which cripples you, that what haunts you, that which keeps you from moving forward. This declaration, it breaks insecurity. It removes the bondage in your mind of you thinking that you should not have it, or that you should not live it, or that you should not desire it. This declaration has the power to break comparisons, always looking at other people and measuring your value and your worth against theirs. It reminds you that greatness is not something that you force. Greatness, prosperity are things that you steward. And we've talked about what it means to be a steward. That a steward is one who manages the affairs of someone else. So your life does not belong to you. Your marriage does not belong to you. Your children, they do not belong to you. Your finances, they do not belong to you. Greatness and prosperity is saying, I am going to be a steward over the resources, the affairs that someone else has given to me. And when you begin to acknowledge that that source is God, when you begin to acknowledge that that source is external of one's own self, that when you begin to acknowledge that all that you are and all that you hope to become and all that you have is centered in God, you stay grounded. You prepare yourself to receive more. You don't hoard over what you have. You freely give it to other people. You freely give it to be a blessing to this world and a blessing to your community. Why? Because you know whatever it is that God has given to you, that God is self-sufficient and it would never run out. So the more you give, the more that is giving to you. Here's my question for you. Has fear, has insecurity, has it stopped you from actually living in greatness and prosperity? What fear, what insecurity disappears when you truly believe that God is your source? What do you let go of? What do you overcome? What do you get through rather than just getting by when you place God at the center? You see, living is about living a source-centered life. It is a source-centered life that changes how you walk every day. It is a source-centered life that empowers you to live in your purpose. Because when you live a source-centered life, you stop panicking when things don't feel right. When your life is source centered, you stop comparing your journey to others. When you live a life that is anchored in God, when you live a source centered life, you stop rushing ahead of wisdom. When this life that you live is source centered, you stop compromising for quick results. You make sure that you live according to the standard that you have established for yourself. That you don't decrease in order to live. You don't minimize in order to gain. And whether that's your finances, whether that's in your relationship, whether that's on your job or starting a business, a source-centered life removes panic. It removes comparing, it removes rushing, and it removes compromising. Because this is what happens in replace. That when your life is source centered, you make plans with peace. And you become settled in the decision that you make. When your life is source centered, all that you do, all of your work, you do it with a spirit of excellency. Why? Because your name is on it. When your life is source centered, you give with confidence that is actually going to be a blessing, and what you give, God is going to return it. When your life is source centered, you save with intentionality. So you go start the bank account. You go open up the savings account. You go open up the investment account. And if you don't have a bank, then you take your money, put it in an envelope, and stick it underneath the mattress. But you do it with intention. And here's the last thing that living a source-centered life does. It builds with patience. There's no rushing. There's no hurrying. There's no worrying. Why? Because you know that you are building something bigger than yourself. You begin to understand that if God provided before, that God has the capacity without diminishing to do it again. In other words, source-centered people, they stay ready. They don't live an anxious life. They don't live a worrisome life. They don't live a high-pressured life. No, self-centered people stay ready because they recognize that their life is anchored. That the wind may blow, the storm may rise, the challenges may come, the frustration may linger, but they are settled, they are anchored, they are sure in this one thing, that God would never put more on them than they can bear. So whatever it is they have, they give it back to God. They give their life back to God. They give their finances back to God. They give their relationship back to God. They give their children back to God. They give their growth back to God. They give their mind back to God. They give it all back to God. Why? Because source-centered people recognize that that's who it came from. So let's take a moment to practice this declaration. This declaration of greatness and prosperity. I want us to declare what James 1:17 says. And so I want you to repeat after me. Are you ready? I declare that every good and perfect gift in my life comes from God. Are you ready? We're going to go through them. I declare that God is my source, and God is consistent, and God is faithful, and God is generous. Are you ready? I declare that I walk in greatness, defined by my purpose and not my pride. I declare that I experience prosperity that brings peace, stability, and capacity. I declare that I steward well what God has entrusted to me. I declare that there is no lack, that there is no fear, that there is no confusion in my life. I declare a life of clarity, a life of provision, and a life of growth. Can we summarize that into one statement? Repeat after me. I declare, according to James 1:17, greatness and prosperity. You see, this declaration is not about striving. It is not about maintaining. It is not about being leveled. No, this declaration is about trust, that you trusted all that you have and all that you hope to become and all that you want to be in this life is centered, is anchored in a God who says, I will supply your every need. People, I want to remind you of this one thing, that you are not chasing greatness, that you are not forcing prosperity, that you are simply receiving and stewarding what God is supplying. Every good thing in your life is evident of God's faithfulness. Every opportunity that falls in your lap is evidence of a gift from God. Every increase that you've measured is truly an assignment from God. And that's why it is so important that you walk confidently. That's why it's so important that you stay grounded. That's why it's so important that you remain grateful. That's why it's so important that you steward well what God has placed in your hands. Up until this point, You have been prepared. All of the declarations have been to inform and to equip you to think differently, to speak differently, to walk differently, to hear differently, to live differently. And now, at this point, it's up to you. At this stage in the game, you must decide to be different. Until next time, may God bless you, may the Lord keep you, and may heaven continue to smile upon you. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to the Power of Transformation. If today's episode blessed you, share it with someone you love. Don't forget to subscribe and stay connected for more tools to declare, believe, and become. Until next time, keep speaking life.